Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis with the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and we're going to be joined by Derek Vandygriff, Mr. Baseball, in just a second. But first, I do want to let you know the Grove Collective is doing their March to Victory campaign. What is this? Well, it is a March Madness style tournament. They're in the Elite Eight right now. It pits regions against each other to see who can donate the most money to Ole Miss's athletics. So go to the grovecollective.com/march to victory, thegrovecollective.com/march to victory. Derek, thank you so much for joining us, man. I watched, let's see, how do I put this? We're going to talk about South Carolina in just a second, but I watched a little bit of the Southern Mississippi game over the weekend, and I had to change 3 different rooms until Ole Miss started hitting the ball. It was the craziest, dangest thing.
Okay, well, first of all, that's where you're going to watch every game of the Tennessee series this weekend. So if you need to put an extra screen or something up so you can keep up with multiple games at the same time, then you've got, about another day to do that. So that might be something you need to get on if you're interested in that.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting because, we'll go, like I said, we'll go back to South Carolina in a second, but we'll start here. Southern Mississippi has been chirping this year more than they normally have been about how they run this state and that they're the baseball school. They even, said that Mississippi State beating them was Mississippi State's Super Bowl. And then they come into the Ole Miss game, and they drop that one as well, which to me, this is the most hilarious thing ever because they decided little brother to be snippy, and then it just completely jumped up and slapped them.
Yeah. I think Southern Miss, whether it be players on that team's fan base, whatever it is, they might just be a little bit pissed off that they broke the streak. And look, we're not happy about it either, right? You had State win a national championship, we won a national championship, and last year was clearly Southern Miss's time. Oddly enough, they couldn't get past the Tennessee Volunteers to make it to Omaha to get it 3 straight for the state of Mississippi. So, if anything, that's on them, though. They had a chance to keep the streak going, and they didn't do it. And as a result, both Mississippi State and Ole Miss decided to put them in their place a little bit here in the early going of the 2024 baseball season.
Yeah, and they also broke the streak of advancing to the College World Series and winning the national title in Pete Taylor Park.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, they've really struggled in super regionals there the last couple of years, right? Obviously the Ole Miss series is the one I will always remember, and them getting so up in arms about the grand slam that never was down there in game 1, I believe it was, if I'm remembering that right. It was a foul ball, so I don't really care what all their fans and baseball personnel think about that. But yeah, that was a hell of a lot of fun a couple years ago when we went down there and won it. And like I said, they had their chance against these Tennessee Volunteers in Pete Taylor Park again and still didn't get it done.
Yeah, and if you go to their social media and look at it, the officials, including through replay, missed 7 or 8 calls last night that cost them the ballgame.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because there's no doubt Smithwick was blocking the plate, right? Even though his foot was there before the runner ever began his slide. And the fact he had the entire rest of the plate to get in if he wanted to, but he just chose not to. He just decided to slide right into Smithwick's foot. That should have been an out. I don't care what they say. There's no reason that should have been overturned. But, yeah, they can sit there and they can whine and cry all they want to. I believe we've got them on the schedule one more time, maybe later this year. I think we usually play them twice. So, we'll go ahead and take care of them one more time when the appropriate time comes around. But, yeah, Ole Miss playing real good right now, though, man. 110 out of 11. This is a baseball team that's really finding its gear at the right time here at the beginning of SEC play.
Yeah, the one complaint I have from that ball game, and it's a legitimate complaint that eats at me. Luke Hill, slide.
Yeah, but it didn't matter. He got in there anyway.
Yeah,
so,
he got just because it worked out doesn't mean he didn't do the wrong thing.
dude, as long as it works, I don't care what anybody does. As long as the run scores, you're not called out, then there might be an alternate universe where he slows down his momentum, and they're able to get the tag down. Who knows? But all I know is the run ended up scoring, and they were out of challenges and couldn't challenge it, thankfully.
Yeah, no, they challenged that play. That play did not get overtime. It got confirmed.
Was that not? I
Yeah,
thought
that
that
was
was
their
the one
last. That was
that
the
they
last
weren't
one.
able.
That was the last challenge that they had. That was the one that they
Oh,
ran out on.
okay. Okay, there was one later on in the game then where they weren't able to challenge it,
Mhm.
where it looked a little. Oh, that was the play at first base, I think it was.
Mm.
That the short hop that Fisher got and threw over to first, they weren't able to challenge. That looked a little hairy there in live time.
I'm really fired up. Ole Miss took a series from South Carolina, ranked South Carolina. I
Hmm.
wish Ole Miss could have gotten the sweep on Sunday, but it just wasn't meant to be. Sometimes you just lose a baseball game.
Yeah, that's not really that big of a deal there. We ended up playing pretty good there. Well, I say that we actually didn't play that good Friday, honestly. And still able to get that thing to to get a W there on Friday. Not playing our best, which is a sign of a good team. That's a good thing to see. You want to see your baseball team win games when they don't play their best, and that's what happened on Friday. And then Saturday we came out and really turned it on there in the eighth inning, obviously, and put some stuff. But it was a hell of a game up to that point, though, through 7 innings. It was a one-run game, I think, leading up to it, and then we put an 8 spot up in the eighth. Stretch it out a little bit. But, yeah, you're never going to complain about a top 20 win at home to open SEC play. Getting that 2 out of 3, especially with what's on deck coming up, and not even this coming weekend, but even the weekends following. This league is unbelievable, man. They are so good at baseball. There's one bad team in the entire league. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't even think Ole Miss drew Missouri this year. But really, really good baseball league, though. To get out of there with 2 out of 3 is a hell of an accomplishment.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. One of the more interesting, I guess you can say,
Mm-hmm.
pieces of the weekend was the guy. What was his name? He had the American Revolutionary era name, Talmadge
Yeah,
LaCroix.
Talmadge
I,
LaCroix, that's him.
what was going on with him playing the games that he was playing? Just play baseball, man. Just play baseball. Him pretending to charge the mound was one of
Mm-hmm.
the most cringeworthy things I've said. I've seen. It was fake. It
Mm-hmm.
was everything that you hate about sports, and anybody that is me first, that's what that was. That was him trying to copy somebody in the major leagues. And when people call me an old man about bat flips and about celebrating in baseball and stuff like that, it is to prevent it from trickling down to where a middling third baseman at a mid-level Southeastern Conference team is not acting like a top of the Major League Baseball batter, and acting like a fool. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. He was kind of playing off the crowd a little bit there too. Once he saw that it kind of got under their skin. But look, this is how you know you're in a new era of baseball, because if that would have happened 15 years ago, he's wearing one right between the numbers in the back his
Mhm.
very next time up, right? And
Mhm.
obviously that ended up not happening, and then carrying it over into Sunday as well, which he ended up having a pretty good game Sunday, but still in the older era of baseball. And I keep saying older, like I'm saying, I mean, it's 10, 15 years ago, somebody's wearing one for something like that. They've taken the self-policing out of the game, obviously, but Mike definitely would have corrected it back 10, 15 years ago, if I had to guess.
Honestly, they just need to take it upon themselves to do it anyway. They
Yeah,
need to
yeah, I
come back.
know.
It's one of those things where they said we shouldn't do this. No, just forget it. You're not going to sit there and make me look like a fool just
Hmm.
because you did something once that happens once every 5 games.
Yeah, and that's again, that's the way the game has changed. Though I know exactly what you're saying, and I totally agree with it. I wish we would go
Mm.
back to that kind of baseball, to where we self police ourselves. We don't count on the umpires and uh, officials back in Birmingham or in the league office, whatever, to deal with anything. When somebody's getting a little too chirpy and trying to rile you up a little too much, that can all be settled with an upper 80s, low 90s fastball, and then it'll be done with after that. But again, times have changed now, and it's just different, I guess.
The other thing they should do is to remove those pads, those elbow pads and things like that. Yeah, if we're gonna do it and open up,
You ain't gonna be sticking that arm out anymore, will you?
Yeah, you're not gonna be sticking that arm out if you're worried about getting your funny bone hit.
Yeah. It's not too funny then.
Yeah, you're not going up there in your shining armor. You're going up there playing
Mhm.
ball like somebody in 1955 did. If you did that, a lot of this would stop.
Yeah.
We joke about that. They talk about whenever they were using the crown of the helmet in
Mhm.
football as a weapon. That only started because technology grew to the point where it was there.
Yeah.
And you could do it. And it's one of those situations where in baseball that same thing is happening.
Yeah.
And
I could absolutely see that. Again, with all the pads and stuff like that they have now. I mean, Lord, it's a miracle.
it takes them 20 minutes after a walk to get undressed.
Well, yeah, but it's a miracle anybody ever beats out a ground ball to first base with all the hardware they're wearing
Yeah.
now, right?
Yeah, seriously. It's like it looks like you're running and catching equipment.
Yeah, and that's not easy to do. All you got to do is watch those catchers try to cover first base on those little grounders to the right side to figure that out.
So, okay, let's change the subject. I know we went down a rabbit hole on that one, but yes, I am
That's okay.
pro throwing at players, and I don't care what
Yeah,
anybody
absolutely.
says.
Yeah, I'm 100% for it.
Yeah. If you hit a home run, great, have fun,
Mhm.
but you celebrate only to the level that you're willing to take a 95-mile-an-hour fastball into the back.
That's it. You celebrate at your own risk. You go as far as you want to,
Mhm.
knowing what's coming later on. It's again watching baseball in the '90s, man. Barry Bonds, for example. I mean, how many home runs did he hit? Right. I
Mhm.
mean, he has that 72 home run season, all-time home run king, asterisk, all that. Me being a Braves fan, it'll always be King Aaron for me. But that's beside the point. Bonds never got back up to the plate and wore one in the shoulder though, because he'd hit that home run and he'd throw that
Just
bat to the
ran around.
side and he'd go into his trot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whenever you're doing crazies like Ronald Acuna. Now, granted, if this was
I do.
old
Yeah.
style, if this was old style 90s baseball, Ronald Acuna would play about 20 games a year because he'd get hurt every time.
Yeah, he absolutely would, and that's probably the best example of how much times have changed is Ronald Acuna, because he will absolutely pimp every single home run he ever hits, and then let you know about it going around the bases. It's actually one thing. It being a Braves fan that I was able to hear about. Freddie Freeman hated it. Like he would get on Acuna all the time for the way he would celebrate home runs and go around the bases and stuff like that, because Freeman grew up in probably the latter part of that era, but that's how he learned to play baseball. And he kept telling me, he said, Ron, you're going to get guys hurt on this team if you keep doing that. And every now and then the Marlins, that's a really good example with Acuna. They hit him like 6 times in a 3-game series because he led off each game with a home run and, of course, trotted on around the bases, juking and jiving and everything with his bat flips and all, which again I loved. I'm a Braves fan. I was sitting there celebrating with him, but every single time he come back up to the plate, he was wearing one either in the shoulder or in the back.
Yeah, and if you're willing to take that, if you
It's
are
fine.
willing to do that, it's
Yeah.
fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have
If you're
no
willing to
problem
take it, it's
doing
fine.
it. But
Yeah.
I think the pitcher should be allowed to do it.
Absolutely.
And
As long as they keep it away from the head and
yes,
knees.
yes,
Anything between that, totally
yeah,
fine.
just small of the back, just
Yes.
ring them up. And
That's
it's the
right.
easiest thing in the world to throw a fastball at that level because the natural height that it goes to
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. And see, this is the stuff people tune in for here, Steve. And
Yeah.
they need baseball etiquette, unwritten rules. We're really, really educating people here about the way baseball used to be and the way it should still be.
Well, this is a fun transition because we talked about this. We're going to
Yeah.
talk about the baseball program that actually got people talking about baseball etiquette in college baseball with 35-foot bat flips and things like that in the air. Tony Vitello is an absolute psychopath. I talked to a couple of players to where somebody like decommitted to him and went somewhere else, and he like called that guy and cussed him out. And
Yeah, he's wild. He's
yeah,
wild, man.
he's an absolute psychopath. So tell me what I
Mhm.
need to know about this Tennessee team.
Unfortunately, there's chances for bat flips here this weekend. Now, one good news is Ole Miss is pitching really, really well. But man, Tennessee can really swing it. They are, it's not quite to the level they were 2 years ago, where they were blasting everything out of the ballpark. But I mean, just some numbers here. I was going through looking at all their offensive numbers earlier today. They're third in batting average, second in home runs, second in slugging, second in runs scored, second in hits, second in RBIs, first in doubles. They have the third most strikeouts. That is one thing we have going for us as a pitching staff. They will strike out a lot because they're trying to hit so many bombs. But this is a lineup that top to bottom just has dudes all over it. They've got 8 guys with an OPS over 1,100 on the year. And every one of those guys has played in at least 17 of the 22 games. 8 guys hitting over 300. They got 6 guys with 6 or more home runs. And it's just a lineup 1 through 9 that's absolutely brutal. But again, at the same time, it's coming at a good time because Ole Miss, I feel like, is pitching so well right now. And I said this in our group chat last night, me and some buddies. It can't be overstated how important it has been for Riley Maddox to take a hold of that midweek slot for us and go 5 to 6 innings for the last 3 weeks. With less than 3 runs, he's been so valuable there. He's been saving this bullpen that is so deep and so good. I'm sure people are tired of hearing me talk about the bullpen. I've been talking about it for 4 months now, leading up to the season. But one thing about it, I was right about the bullpen, though, right? It is that dominant. It is that good. It is that deep. And Riley's doing his
Bat
part to
flip.
save those guys. Yeah, that's it, right?
Yeah.
And just go ahead and chalk that one up. But Riley's doing his part to save these guys going into the weekend too. So we've got a lot of guys that can come in, strike guys out, which is something that they really have trouble with. It's going to be one heck of a matchup, seeing how our pitchers match up with their hitters, because man, they can swing it as good as anybody in the country.
Yeah, and in that stadium, what is it,
Yeah, it
Lindsey Nelson
flies.
Field or whatever,
Yeah.
the ball
Uh-huh.
flies. It's a launching
Yeah.
pad.
Yeah, and Tennessee going into this weekend is 16-0 at home. They've yet to drop a home game there. I'm sure that has nothing to do with the bat checks and stuff like that came up a couple years ago. I'm sure it's a total coincidence that they never lose at home. But I digress a little bit here. But it's going to be a really good series though between Ole Miss and Tennessee. And look, this is one Tennessee's going to need to get too. They've got to win 2 this weekend. They dropped 2 over the weekend in Tuscaloosa against Alabama. And you saw it with Ole Miss last year. If you start stacking losses in this league, especially early, you dig yourself such a hole with how many great teams are in this conference. It's really hard to get out of. So if they end up dropping to 2-4 here, then they're really going to be in not panic mode, but they're really going to be motivated to try to win some games, and they know how tough it'll be if they drop to 2-4 this weekend. So I expect to get Tennessee's best when we travel up to Knoxville Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
And if you look at Ole Miss, if they can come out of this with 4 wins, get ready to go.
Yeah, because it really sets up pretty well for Ole Miss at that point. If you're able to get 2 out of 3 here and move to 4-2 in conference play, where you're coming right back home for a Kentucky team that, while they've played well, they just swept Georgia over the weekend in Lexington. But you get on that Swayze Field, and that's a team that you could easily expect to get at least 2 from when they come to Oxford. And if you do that, you're talking about being 6-3 and a total free shot by the time you head to Fayetteville, Arkansas, to face #1 team in the country. And we all know that series with Ole Miss and Arkansas, it's always so highly competitive, and it's always a great series. But you really allow yourself a little bit of wiggle room going into that Arkansas series if you're able to take 2 this weekend, 2 next weekend, and then after that you get Mississippi State at home. Then you travel to Athens to play Georgia, and then you get the return of TJ McCants with Alabama coming to Oxford, and then at Auburn, A&M at home. I mean, there's no breaks, but it does set up fairly nice for you if you're able to find a way to get 2 out of 3 this weekend. I think that's the point.
Yeah, and if you look at overall, I think the goal should be, and this is just a realistic goal that Ole Miss fans should have, is 5-4 going to Fayetteville.
But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you're 5-4 going to Fayetteville, you're in pretty good shape. You're talking about taking. I mean, if you only take 1 at Tennessee, that gets you to 3-3, and then you just need to come home and take care of business against Kentucky there. Yeah, win series, take 2 out of 3, and then you're 5-4 heading into Fayetteville there, and you're still in good shape because of the way the schedule sets up. You don't get a break as far as getting bad teams. We don't get the only bad team in the league, but you get good teams coming to your place, and that's where you really need to defend home field. When you get them in Oxford, you got to start taking at least 2. And that's what the Rebels did this past weekend, like we talked about earlier. That's why it was such a big deal. Getting 2 there, heading to Knoxville is just going to be a huge challenge for Mike Bianco and these Ole Miss Rebels.
Yeah, road games don't get swept. Home games, our home series, get at least 2. That's
at least 2. That's
the formula.
And if you do that all year long, just that one formula, it's not going to work out that way. It never works out that way, where you take 2 at home and lose 2 on the road. Well, I mean, if you do that, you're 15-15, and you are safely in the NCAA tournament, and quite frankly, you're able to go to Hoover, and if you make a long enough run there, then you're able to, put yourself into a hosting conversation when it comes regional time. Because one thing about the SEC, especially not having Missouri on the schedule, your RPI is going to be so good all year long when you don't take that 1 RPI hit that the SEC has. Tennessee's 19-3, they're 1-2 in the league, and they have a 17 RPI. And this year, the baseball committee is using a quad scale like the basketball tournament does, the quad 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. And, when you go on the road against a 17 RPI, I mean, if you played them at home, it would be quad 1. But, Lord, you've got so much more variance there on the road to where it would be such a huge win. And one thing I noticed looking at Tennessee, they haven't been particularly good against good teams so far this year. They're only 2-3 against top 50 teams in the RPI so far this year. So they're going to try to reverse that trend, obviously, this weekend with Ole Miss coming into town. But they're a gettable team, but make no mistake, they are one of the probably 10, 15 best teams in the country, without a doubt.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Derek Vandygriff, Mr. Baseball, joining us to talk about this series with the Tennessee Volunteers this weekend. Thank you, Derek, man. We'll talk to you next week, bud.
All right, bud. Hi, Toddy.
Hotty toddy.